Hello, I'm Justin,
And I'm Christine.
and we're the owners of the Bottle Room.
Welcome to our live virtual tasting review of Hall's Napa Valley Cabernet Sauvignon. We're excited to jump back into a virtual tasting here with you tonight. I see we have a lot of viewers jumping on. Open that bottle. Let's get it in your glass and experience what's inside this Hall right after we get back from this.
All right, welcome everybody. We're here doing the Hall tasting. I'm Justin again. This is Christine, and we've got this beautiful 2020 Hall that's going to be fantastic. We've also got one of Hall's experts with us that's going to join us here and talk to us about everything Hall Winery, and we can ask questions and figure out anything we want to know about this wine. So make sure you have it open and get it prepared, because we're going to go everything Hall right now.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's bring on Tony.
Yep, Tony is the Midwest and Caribbean manager for Hall Winery, and we're going to bring him onto the stage here and introduce him and get to know him and figure out what's going on with this winery.
Perfect.
So, hello, Tony. Can you see us on there?
Yeah, I can.
All right.
Fantastic. So again, Tony is the manager for the Midwest and Caribbean regions for Hall Winery. He's coming to us from Ohio. So welcome, Tony. Fellow Midwesterner there. And we've already cracked our Hall. So if you haven't yet cracked this beautiful wine, to our viewers, please do so, because it is smelling amazing in the glass. Absolutely. And we can't wait to dive into it.
And cheers from here to Cincinnati.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Cheers, friends.
So Tony actually brought us a really cool video about this specific wine. The winemaker talks a little bit about it. So we're going to dive into that super quick here. And then we're going to reconvene, smell, and chat about the wine. And then Tony's going to give us a little bit of the history of the wine. So let's do it.
Awesome.
Hello, I'm Megan Gunderson, Director of Winemaking for Hall Family of Wines. Our Hall Napa Valley Cabernet Sauvignon is a classic expression of this varietal from this very unique place. We are fortunate to be able to source fruit from 13 of the 16 sub-appellations throughout Napa Valley. So what that means for this wine is that myriad of vineyard sourcing is bringing a lot of complexity and layering and just a vibrancy to this wine. It always starts with a base of valley floor fruit. And from there, we layer in fruit from several different appellations, from rugged mountainsides to alluvial fans closer to the Napa River, a very diverse selection of vineyard sourcing that we're very fortunate to work with. And that brings a lot of layering and complexity to this wine. It's truly unique. I can't think of many other wineries in Napa that have the luxury of such diverse fruit sourcing. That also brings a lot of consistency to this blend. It's always very fruit forward. It's got a solid core of tannin. It's a beautiful wine that will age for many years to come, and we hope that you love it as much as we do.
Awesome. Fantastic video there.
Perfect. And before Tony dives into some of the details on the wine, I just wanted our viewers that are live to know that if you do want to leave a comment or have any questions, please do so that in the comments section, we can get those answered for you live while we're on this video call too.
Absolutely.
So complexity. Oh my gosh, Tony, 13 different vineyard sites is what this wine is being sourced from. That's pretty amazing. And I love how Michelle had mentioned that is the complexity of this wine. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
I sure can. And it's not 13 different vineyard sites. It's 13 of this now, as of like 2 months ago, there's a 17th appellation in Napa Valley.
Oh my goodness. Oh, thank you for
Um,
correcting me on that. So 13 appellation AVAs is what this
yeah,
is
yeah,
from?
13 of the 17 is where it's sourced from. But within that, there are in any given season over 50 different vineyard sites where the fruit is coming from.
Wow.
And as Megan said in her intro, the base of it begins on the valley floor. So it's valley floor fruit. And we'll talk a little bit more about the difference between where the fruit grows in Napa Valley. This is why we're sourcing it from so many different places, because each place brings a different component. But the fruit from the valley floor, especially where we are, which is in St. Helena, about 2/3 of the way north in the valley, it's really warm, hot. It's sunny, it's dry up in here. And so the fruit in the low elevation, right? So the fruit off the valley floor is just bringing a whole lot of depth and body and a bit of a plush characteristic.
Wow.
And then we'll build complexities around
the valley
that.
floor here for all those of you that
Yeah.
aren't sure what the valley floor looks like.
So you can see this is the valley floor, and then there'll be other photographs that we'll see, but you can see in the distance there are hillsides, and then even behind that you can see a shadow of a mountain. So we're going from about 150 feet elevation, like sea level, up to above 1,500 feet in Napa Valley, all in all.
Fantastic.
Awesome. So what are we smelling in this, Tony? I mean, there is a lot going on here, and would love to chat a little bit on the assessment of this wine. Viewers, what are you smelling? What are you tasting out there? Would love to hear that from you all as well.
So for me, what I love about our Hall Napa Valley Cabernet is there's a lot of complexity that comes after, but initially you're greeted with just a depth of core fruit, right? There's a lot of fruit forward characteristics right off the bat. So I'm getting black currant, pomegranate, wild raspberry, and even a little bit of a rose petal characteristic. And then beyond that, there's herbaceousness. So there's something that's prominent in Cabernet Sauvignon. It's something that we call pyrazines. So if you've had a Cabernet Sauvignon or even a Sauvignon Blanc, because they're all kind of the same class of grape, Merlot, Cabernet Franc, right? All of these, there's this herbaceous character, almost like a capsicum or a green bell pepper type of a note. And when a Cabernet Sauvignon, for example, it doesn't achieve its full ripeness, that bell pepper note is very prominent, and it lessens as it gets more ripe. But when you have a Cabernet that grows at higher elevation, that's closer to the sun, it's getting more ultraviolet intensity. But it's because it's higher up, it's cooler. So it's getting a lot of sunshine, but it's getting a lot of, but it's still really cool. So it might not fully ripen in that way. But because of that higher elevation and that intense ultraviolet interaction on the skin, that herbaceous characteristic sort of morphs into a sage or a eucalyptus or a mintiness, right? And so that is what's happening here. Those higher elevation Cabernet that we're putting into the blend, you're able to capture a little bit more complexity. There's like a sage, like a minty note that I'm getting.
Yeah, I know Christine always mentions that when we're blind tasting each other, she's like, "Oh, I get that little eucalyptus." I'm thinking that's got to be a Napa. So
and really loved how you mentioned as well, Tony, the complexity as well on the finish, and that's one thing that I personally look for in a wine. And a lot of people ask just often, what's the difference between a $10 bottle of wine and a $50 bottle of wine? And for me, if I'm not having that complexity and that finish long after I swallowed, it's not time.
No, you're absolutely right. There's really three parts to the tasting experience. There's the middle, the beginning, the middle, and the end. And the beginning it's just the beginning. You're just getting to know one another. There's a lot of things that are just kind of coming at you quickly, and they're really upfront, but they haven't had a chance to unfurl yet, right? And so you get that immediate sensation. That's what we were just talking about, those immediate characteristics. But then as you smell the wine, and then you put the wine in your palate, and you're you're tasting the wine and you swallow the wine, there's this middle period. And that middle period where all those things unfurl. And there's a lot to be said about the middle palate, because if you've got a beginning and you go straight to the end, you don't feel complete. So in here, there's this whole middle palate of ripe fruit and herbaceous complexity, minerality that's going on. And then when you swallow the wine, there's that finish that you talked about. And if everything's great, the beginning is great and the middle's great, and then you swallow the wine and then it's just gone, right? Like it doesn't hang around in your palate. It's disappointing, right?
Absolutely.
And so that finish is incredibly important to the overall quality of the wine, or how we evaluate the wine. Because if it's good in the middle or in the beginning, and it's good in the middle, but it just doesn't hang around after you swallow it, it's only there's only so much,
it's disappointing.
Very disappointing. And one of
the other nice
pull it out of your gums, for could be 10, 20, 30 seconds after,
Yeah. And the other nice part about this wine is that it really has good structure to it. It's enveloping your mouth. You can feel the weight to it.
You haven't even tried it yet.
I have. I've had 3 sips.
All right.
He's a sneaky sipper, Christine. Very sneaky sipper.
I've been enjoying
the
mine.
sneaky sipper.
Great. Well, Tony, let's get into the awesome founders of this winery.
Sure.
Great, beautiful picture there. They're just gorgeous.
Yeah,
they're happy and jovial and all the things. So Craig and Catherine Hall.
Yeah, and that's how they are. They're very jovial, very kind. They're very easy to be with people. They are incredibly wealthy people, but they weren't born that way. They're both from middle-class upbringings. Catherine grew up on a farm in Mendocino. Her parents grew Chardonnay and Pinot Noir grapes in the middle of nowhere. And that's how how she came up. And Craig his mother was a high school art teacher. He's from Ann Arbor, Michigan. And he started a hedge fund in 1968 with $4,000. And that's how they began. I mean, he ended up owning like a third of the Dallas Cowboys at one point along the way. And I don't know if you guys know this about Catherine, but she was the U.S. ambassador to Austria across the latter Clinton and early Bush administrations.
I did see that. How crazy is that? How do you keep a life like that straight?
They have homes. They have a home in Napa. They have a home in Dallas. They have an apartment in Paris. They have a yacht that they charter out, and they have a home in Hawaii. But they didn't start that way. That's not silver spoon stuff. That's two self-made people, and believe me, they're very philanthropic. They give a lot.
I saw that they're really into startups for entrepreneurs, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And Catherine is a mentor to a lot of women that are trying to do a bunch of different things, and they're super involved. And if you knew more about them like I do, you'd be really proud of the kind of humans they are.
That's great. So Craig is really into art as well, and I think it's fun that carries through to the winery itself. The winery there in Napa. Let's show some of those pictures, Justin.
Sure.
Wow, what a winery.
I just love this nighttime one. I had to go right to the nighttime one because I was like, wow, that is super awesome. I love the lighting on the old winery there, and then the the new fashionable area. That was super awesome.
And let's roll on to the iconic the bunny there, which is right at the drive entrance for Hall Winery, on their labels as well. What's the significance of the rabbit, Tony?
Yeah, well, so I'd mentioned a moment ago that Catherine grew up on a farm in Mendocino, California. There were bunnies everywhere, and she just, as a little girl, fell in love with bunnies. Her parents took the Bunny Foo Foo song, right? Do you know this song, Bunny Foo Foo?
Yeah, Little Bunny Foo Foo.
We have kids. We know the song.
So her parents had adapted that song for Life in the Vineyard. And so she, had been sung this version, this like vineyard centric song version all her life. And she taught it to her kids, who taught it to their kids. So it's now like at least 4 generations of this song. And so the bunny is like a bit of a, a totem or a patronus if you're into Harry Potter, right? It's her symbol. It's her spirit animal, right?
Gotcha.
Yeah, and she doesn't eat. She eats protein from the sea, but she doesn't eat any land protein. So, so that's the significance of the bunny. And if you ever go to St. Helena or go to the winery, there's this, and you can see it right there. And I'll explain the picture a little bit more, but that, it's a 30-foot silver bunny that's like hopping up out of the vineyard, and you can see it right off the main highway that goes through Napa, the Napa Valley Highway. And I chose this picture because there's the fire back there. And in 2020, it was a hard year. It was a really, really tough year. If you think about everything that you were dealing with in 2020, just if you think about the middle of March, like what's going on now, it's like the middle of May, this is still going on. And then just as it unfolded, it just was unprecedented for all of us, unless you were, 110 years old and you had a memory of it happening, in 1919, when it had happened before. And so you think about, all your anxiety, all your uncertainty, wearing masks, socially distanced, bare bones crew, all those headwinds and challenges. Then you've got this enduring drought on top of all of it. And then in August and September, 2 fires break out in the far north of the Napa Valley, causing even, further stress and turmoil. And you're dealing with all of those things, and yet you still are able to make something like this, So I really like to lean into 2020 and talk about how challenging of a year it was, how much everyone had to overcome, to do their jobs and to make something beautiful like this. And, that's why I put this picture in here, because I don't want to hide from it or gloss it over. I want to lean into it and really talk about it, because I think it adds credibility to the whole operation.
So that is a legitimate image of the fire.
Yeah.
Like, literally in your driveway.
Yeah. Well, these are intense fires. It's not as close as it may seem, but it's, the fires were toward the north. So St. Helena, where our winery is about 2/3 of the way up the valley. And if you were standing at our winery in the middle of these fires and you were looking south, it was beautiful blue skies. You would never know. And you turn around and this is what you see. But all the smoke was moving northeast.
So you had mentioned the fires really started August, September timeframe. So did you have fruit picked prior to that happening then?
We had, and most people, well, let me just speak in general terms. There was about 30% of the Cabernet had already been harvested. But then you had that remaining Cabernet that had not been brought in yet. And I want to go back to what we talked about in the beginning, which is we're sourcing fruit from 13 of the 16 AVAs, over 50 unique vineyard sites. So this did not impact too much the wine that we made, right? We made less. Totally, we made less, right? And we've worked too hard for too long to ever compromise that by making something compromised. And we didn't do that at all. What it meant is maybe there was a little less northern fruit in the blend, a little bit more central and southern fruit that we wouldn't otherwise not normally put so much into that. But so the blend in 2020 wasn't as, comprehensively and equitably sourced throughout the entire Napa Valley in 2020 as it might otherwise be. But and we made less of it, but we still made something quite nice.
Beautiful. It is a beautiful wine.
Yeah.
Absolutely enjoying that.
Thank you. And and I love to talk about this. 2020 was, it was a weird year, and especially if you're out in Napa Valley and you deal with all these extra things and still do your job, which is to make beautiful wine.
Yeah, I think a lot of people talk about how they had to pivot during that time, and that was the kind of the buzzword at the time. And we did the same thing, and that's kind of where our virtual tasting started. Back then, we did quite a few of them, it was something that helped us through that time also to keep our managers employed and move through it and get to the other side.
Absolutely. So we keep talking about all of these different sourced AVAs. Let's pull up that map.
It's a perfect
Uh,
segue.
yeah. So wow, look at all these different areas that fruit is coming from.
Yeah. So I don't know what everyone can see. I guess it depends on how big your monitor is that you're looking at this through. But here are the shaded area. The green is outside of the appellation. So we don't have to worry about that. So it's all these little shaded areas in here. Those are the appellations that are Napa Valley. And if you're not sure what appellation means, appellation is simply a boundary that's been created, given a name, because the fruit within that boundary has been able to demonstrate that it creates something unique to that particular area with that place name. And so and the reason why Napa has so many, and a lot of people think of Napa as something monolithic, but it's not. There's a whole lot going on beneath the surface. So you've got about 28 miles long from north to south and 8 miles wide at its widest point. And then you've got elevation changes, like I'd mentioned before, from like 150 feet up to above 1,500. So what that means is the fruit in the southern part of the valley, because it's right up against the San Pablo Bay, it's really cool down there, right? Because that fog is rolling in, that cool air is rolling in off the San Pablo Bay, which is like an offshoot of the San Francisco Bay, famous for its cool waters and its cool air, right? But then there's that fog is rolling off. So the further north you go, the warmer it gets, but also the sooner the fog burns away. So as you move north, you get a lot more sunshine throughout the day relative to the south. So this has a big impact on the nature of the fruit, right? Not necessarily the quality of the fruit, the nature of the fruit, right? How it's going to behave. If it's going to grow in a bunch of fog in a cool growing environment, then those herbaceous characteristics are going to be more prominent. And then if it grows like way up in the northern end of the valley on the valley floor, it's just going to be really hot and sunny. And Cabernet wants a long, hot growing period. It wants to just hot, sun, all the way to the end. Loves it, right? Loves it. So the more of that, then that's when you get these really big, soft, round Cabernets when they're like that. So the more north you go, you get that type of a characteristic, right? But then you've also got elevation change. You've got from the valley floor, 150 feet up to 1,500 feet or higher. Up in the mountains, we know that as we go higher, it gets cooler, right? So cool air is really important to wine because especially like when the differences between the day and the night, the heat and then the coolness of the night, it's called diurnal shift. So when you've got a big diurnal shift, meaning the temperature difference from day to night is really stark. What happens is that helps heighten aromatics in the varietal, but it also helps preserve the acidity in the varietal. Because a lot of people don't know this, but as a grape is ripening, there's two kinds of ripening. There's the kind of ripening that the sun does, which ripens the skins, but then there's sugars within the grape that are developing, but that's just based on warmth. So if it's a really hot day and the ground is warm and the sun goes down, it gets cool at night, but there's still warmth radiating up out of the ground, those grapes can still ripen, right? And so the more they're ripened, the more sugar they're creating, the less acid is present in the grape. So this diurnal shift is really important because at nighttime, that sugar production stops. Now, what's even more important is that the acid decline also stops, because when you want to harvest, you want to have this balance of lots of sugar, because that's where the alcohol is going to come from. But if there's not enough acidity in the berry, you're not going to have a very balanced wine. It's not going to be as enjoyable. So that's what happens as you go up higher. Plus, I mentioned the complexities of ultraviolet radiation on the skins from higher elevation, instead of that cool kind of bell pepper characteristic happening, which happens when it's lower. When it's higher, that herbaceous character kind of morphs into this, minty, eucalyptusy, even fennel, that kind of a characteristic. So it adds this complexity. But even more than that, you've got the difference between the East and the West. So if you've got, just think about this, you've got Cabernet growing on the western slopes facing the eastern sun. So you get the morning light. It's all still and calm, right? Because everyone's been sleeping. All the dust is settled. So that sunlight is really direct and pure. But conversely speaking, you take those grapes growing on the eastern slope, which are receiving the sunlight in the afternoon, which is filtered through, it's not clear and direct like the morning light. It's now filtered through just all the dust and the chaos of the day, and the movement of humanity kicks up everything. And so that light is passing through all of that to get to the grapes. That in itself creates a difference in the way that the grape will behave, right? In the way that it will express itself. And then you take everything that I just said and consider that half of every type of soil type on planet Earth is found in Napa Valley.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
All of these very specific, unique metrics compound to create essentially an infinite number of expressions of the Cabernet grape in this area. So you might not have thought of it like this, but it's not just Napa Cab is all the same. Napa Cab is really different. It just depends on where the fruit's coming from in that valley, for the reasons that I stated and others that I won't even go into now, for time and just for simplicity.
Nice. I don't know if anybody has any questions out there, but if they want to throw some questions up down in the comment section, we'd love to definitely answer anything that people might be wondering about either the wine, the region,
about Hall, the winery. Absolutely. I actually have a question. I'm going to start us out, and I'm going to use some photos to set the stage here. It's a question for Tony. So beautiful winery. Let's first go back to the winery. So here's our gorgeous winery that we have here for Hull. We're going to go below ground. Let's go into the cellars. So we're walking through these amazing cellar systems, barrel rooms, all of that fun. And then we come across this, which I'm told is called the chandelier room.
Yeah.
What is this used for, Tony? It's gorgeous. And how do I get in there?
This is reserved for kings and queens.
I just missed the
cut. I when I look at this table, I think of Shrek and Fiona having dinner together at opposite ends.
Nice. Is that supposed to be the growth of like roots coming down, or is that that a tree or what?
It's a grapevine.
That's kind of what I was.
Oh my goodness!
It's an upside. It's a grapevine.
Yeah, is it a real grapevine?
No, it's just modeled after it. And Catherine, the story that I've heard, she was traveling through. I want to say she was in New York City. She was in Penn Station, and she saw there was a guest sculpture that had been that she came upon and fell in love with it, and contacted the artist and said, "I would like you to do what you do, but I've got this idea to create a chandelier modeled after a wine root, right? After like wine stock and the roots, and then all the chandeliers are that's all the grapes. So it's an upside down. The ceiling is essentially the earth, and then the grapes are hanging, and those are the little Swarovski crystals."
That is such a beautiful room. So have you been in there, or is it really just reserved for?
I've been in there many times. It hosts our most exclusive tasting experience at the winery.
Wow.
Well, Andrea here says that Christine is a princess. So does that count?
Yes, come on. Thanks, Andrea.
Yeah, it's actually not underneath our winery. It's actually up in the hills across the valley. In Rutherford. So we've got, and this is so neat, right? Because I remember Catherine was the U.S. ambassador to Austria.
Yep.
So while she was in Austria, she became friends with Austria's preeminent cave builder. And cave building is a thing in Austria. And so they became friends. And when her tenure was over, he came to visit in California as they were putting, trying to build their winery and build their brand. And they were developing this property. And he came over and he said, I want to build your cave for you. And Craig was like, well, how much is that going to cost us? Because he's a real estate developer. I mean, this is his world. And the cave maker said, well, I don't quite really know how much it's going to cost, but let me just assure you that I will only make 1 penny off of the deal. And so Craig and Catherine felt, I guess, compelled after that. He was going to put all of this time and energy into it and not make any profit off of it. But knowing that he was the man, right? He was the best of the best. And so what he did, if you can go back to that picture of with the barrels, that one, exactly. So see all those bricks, every brick that you see.
Yep.
Every single brick was repatriated from the rubble of Habsburg Dynasty era edifices.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow, unbelievable.
Pretty crazy, right?
That is crazy.
Yeah, really crazy.
We just had another question pop up, Tony, a great one. Wasn't going to dive too much into it, but I think we should. So Hall Winery was actually the site in Napa Valley where at one time almost 40% of all Napa Valley wine production was made.
Yeah.
And the Bergfeld reference. Let's get into that. Let's pop that question up, Justin, and see if Tony can touch a little bit more on this.
Who's doing their homework out there?
Oh, I know. We've got some complex tasters on the call today.
Right.
I like this.
Mr. Strange with the question. So I'm glad you brought this up because I had wanted to say something a few slides back, but we just got carried away and I didn't get back to it. But could we go back to that picture of the night photo where you have the modern winery and then the juxtaposition of the older building? Thank you. That's it. So this modern winery that you see, this was actually built upon what was once known as the Napa Valley Co-op. Now, it's hard to imagine if you go back half a century, 40% or so of the wine in Napa Valley was actually made at the site, but it was made in a cooperative. You go back a half a century and Napa Valley wasn't the place it is today. It was just a bunch of middle-class farmers. You didn't have this incredible investment culture going on. So you just had middle-class farmers, and it's expensive to make wine, folks. It's a lot of equipment. It's just, you need a lot. And people of the good people of this valley, just most of them didn't have a lot, right? So they pulled their resources and they shared their, they bought tanks and they bought tractors and they bought all the things they needed to make wine, and they shared the facility. And so this modern winery was built upon that. After it had sat, it was just a defunct model for 20 years, and it just really kind of sat there not doing much when we purchased it in 2004, I believe. Now, what was also very attractive about buying the Napa Valley Co-op with its potential for not mass production, but big production, was that it came with this Bergfeld property. And the Bergfeld property is one of the longest continuously farmed plots of land for viticulture in all of Napa Valley. Grapes have been harvested off of the Bergfeld property, which sits just behind that brick barn there, since 1873. Now, by European standards, that's not a lot, right? I know wineries in Europe that have been making wine continuously since the middle 1100s. There's ones that go back even further. But for the USA, that's a pretty long time. 1873 is just about as far back as Napa Valley goes for viticulture. And so that's what that Bergfeld property is all about. And it's so neat that you get to come to our property and you get to experience, this very, really modern state-of-the-art winery. But then you also have this remnant of the past right next to it. And the juxtaposition is just really powerful.
That's a beautiful picture.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Great. I appreciate that history and great question. That was a fantastic one to bring up.
Yeah,
very nice.
Absolutely. Well,
Perfect.
yeah, I mean, I feel like we've hit a lot of great stuff here.
We have.
Tasted the wine, and
there's a lot of great
learned
comments
a
on the
lot.
wine. I'm loving to see that people are enjoying it. I am as well.
Yeah, it's
Justin
absolutely
clearly
beautiful.
not, but I'll pour myself
What do
a
you
little
mean?
bit more.
I was all the way up to the bottom of the bottle room on my glass here, so I'm about half a glass through.
I would like to offer one more thing about what we do, and I want to tell you about the way that we make our wine, because it speaks a lot to the mentality of the halls and everyone that's a part of the operation. So, remember Catherine, so the French word for grape farmer is vigneron. And Catherine is from a vigneron family, and she herself is a vigneron. So she's a grape grower. And I don't know, if you didn't know this, listen to what I'm going to tell you. The single most important metric for making great wine is the quality of the fruit. It's growing the right thing in the right place. And if you don't have that going for you, there's only so far that skill or talent as a winemaker can take you. So we know that. So we're growing, if you see all those little dots, right? So we're about 70% estate. And then 30% of our fruit we get from multi-generational farming families. Some of the most coveted, sought after fruit in Napa, it just comes from farmers. They own the land and they pick who they want to sell fruit to. And just keep that in mind when you, a lot of people use the word estate as a catch-all quality buzzword, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. It just means you're controlling the farming, right? But which is important, and that's cool if you can do that, but it's all about site, right? And if the site is not, if you're not growing the best thing in the best place, there's only so far that'll take you, right? And it's much, your capability of making something great is much more enhanced if you're buying fruit off of the right site than it is controlling the fruit off of the wrong site, if that makes sense. Right?
That's a great point. That's a great point.
So we're about 70% estate, and then 30% we bring in from these longstanding farming families. We harvest by hand always, and we do it at night whenever we can. And it's important to do it at night because everything's moving slower. So all of the things, believe me, like a grape is a very coveted nutrition source for pests and animals and bacteria. And I don't know if viruses quite need the nutrition, but the viruses are present here too, and they love to feast upon the grapes. And so we've got all these predators, right? You can, by picking at night, everything's moving slower. So all these things that could get in the way, and oxygen is also wants to prey upon the wine. So by picking at night, everything's moving slower. It buys us a little bit of time to get the grapes back into the production facility. So we're harvesting by hand. We're doing it at night. We only use the free run juice. So the free run is basically it's the juice that is released through the natural handling of the fruit. And there's a very light pressing that can happen, very, very minimal, very, very light. And this is important because in the center of the grape is a seed, and around that seed is a sac of bitter oil. So the more you squeeze a grape, the more juice you're going to get. Yeah. But the more you squeeze the grape, the more bitter oils you're going to leach into the juice, which will detract from the overall quality of what you're trying to do. So if you're just trying to make a bunch of high volume wine, then maybe that's okay for you. But we only use that free run. That way we eliminate or greatly mitigate any of those bitter oils finding their way into the juice, which will find its way into the wine as an astringency. Fermentation begins only with yeast native to the vineyard. Now, we may add yeast later to finish it in a predictable manner, but it always begins with that native yeast. That's important because that yeast is very specific to that property and has yeast is also a really important part of how the grape will express itself. So you can use yeasts very strategically to accomplish certain things. Yeast is a really big business, if you didn't know. And I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole of yeast, but
the rabbit hole. Do you use that term a
lot? Believe me, wine is a rabbit hole. You have to be very careful not to get sucked down into it. And so we only use that native yeast. So that allows our properties to speak very uniquely about where the fruit is coming from. Then once that juice is released, it only flows via gravity until fermentation begins, right? So it's never pumped or agitated or oxygenated. Like it just flows via gravity. Everything's really holistic, really gentle, really like minimal human intervention. And then once fermentation begins, we don't filter any of the wine, and we don't fine any of the wine. So everything, like I said, is just done really hands off, really minimal intervention. It's very holistically, almost kind of naturally, if you will, right? I don't like to use natural wine because it can have a funky kind of connotation to certain people. Our wines are clean, fresh, and focused, right? But they're made really naturally. They're made with minimal human intervention. And that's something that we're really proud of. And as you taste through this wine, and if you encounter any of our others, you'll find that they're all really easy to like, easy to understand. They're fresh, they're focused, they're fun, right? And you just want to keep coming back to them time and time again.
Absolutely. And so Tony had mentioned any of the other wines. Of course, Hall has a line of wines, but in the family, we also have Walt and Baca lines of wine, which are equally fantastic. I know we have a ton of Walt lovers on the call today. We have a very strong following for Walt at the Bottle Room. So
cool.
That's the Pinot Noir line.
I'm one of them.
Yes. We do go through a lot of Walt. Great comment too, Tony. Check out this if you can see that on your screen. Bravo.
Thank you, Penny.
Indeed.
Bravo. Thank you,
Penny. Great knowledge today from Tony. We do have one other quick question that we wanted to pop up regarding all of these different sites where we're sourcing wine from. St. Helena, Rutherford, all of these different AVAs. Can you talk a little bit about the difference in what we're going to see flavor-wise from these different areas?
Sure. Typically, St. Helena fruit, because it's on the valley floor, so it's about 2/3 of the way up the valley. So there's not a lot of fog that gets up there. So it pretty much enjoys a lot of sunshine, a lot of warmth all day long growing period. So the St. Helena fruit is going to be it's going to be plush. It's going to be very ripe. It's going to be very fruit forward. The tannins are going to be soft. And if that's the kind of wine that you like, big fruit, soft tannin, moderate, not too high of acidity, not plucky or anything, then a St. Helena wine is right up your alley. If you want something that's got a little bit more of a tannic grip, something that's got a little bit more, and I want to say complexity. I don't want to say that Rutherford wine or St. Helena Valley wines can be very complex and very high quality, but they're really plush and rounded and soft, right? By and large. But Rutherford, you go up in elevation, maybe 500 to 800 feet, so it's a little bit cooler. Also, the terroir up there is different. It's got a lot of red clay in it, and Rutherford is known for having this kind of a dusty characteristic about it. That's what it's really famous for. It's the red dust that you find in the soil. People say they can taste it in the wine, at least tectorially. They can sense this like dusty, fine grain type of a tannic.
And if you can't, keep trying.
And if you don't find that yet, just keep trying, and maybe you'll get it. So those are the big differences between St. Helena and Rutherford. But those are both about the same distance north in the valley as each other. They're just across the valley from one another. Another thing, too, St. Helena fruit's going to receive, because it's a little bit more on the western side of the valley, it's going to get more of that like afternoon, that like filtered light through the afternoon, whereas Rutherford is on the eastern side of the valley. So that's going to, St. Helena's more on the western side, and then Rutherford's on the eastern side. So that eastern light is going to be more clean and direct and pure. So, but those are the two little differences between St. Helene and Rutherford, for example. Those two.
Absolutely. John, I hope that answers your question there with the difference between St. Helene and Rutherford.
Yeah. A lot of people, I'd say, like people who drink Napa a lot, Rutherford is on most people's short list of their favorite little appellations in Napa, I would say. So
Nice.
Absolutely. It's not on our short list. we're Rutherford drinkers.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Rutherford is. If I said St. Helene, I misspoke. Rutherford is always on people's short list of like their favorite parts of Napa.
Yes, absolutely. We enjoy good Rutherford wines. Yeah, absolutely. Perfect. Well, Tony, thank you so much. This has been so informational. I think a lot of people just glean so much from your knowledge and the history on Hall. And I know
tasted the wine. We learned a lot about it. I feel like I'm right in Napa right now.
Oh, I know. I wish it's snowing out there, I think.
Well, have me back, and we'll do Walt next time.
Oh, we should do that for sure.
Fantastic. Yeah. I don't think we've done a Walt. So absolutely. I mean, I found Walt at a Wine Spectator Grand Tour event once a long time ago and been in love with it ever since. So
were you in Chicago?
It was Chicago. Yep.
I probably poured it for you.
You probably poured it for me. And I was like, what is this? I'm loving it.
I bet it was the Clopepe.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right.
Perfect.
Well, thank you very much again. And thank you everybody else for joining us here with the Bottle Room and Hall Winery and enjoying this 2020 Cabernet Sauvignon.
Absolutely. Cheers.
Cheers to everybody and have a beautiful night. And until next time.
Cheers, everybody. Have a Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you also. Good night.